It was late April, a late spring cold snap. Over a month of continuous hail and heavy rain finally, at 10 o'clock tonight, completely destroyed the power supply in northern Los Angeles. The dazzling neon lights dimmed simultaneously, as if eternal night had descended. Ah, Mr. Chu. In the top-floor private room of Yedu, Chu Jingyi withdrew his gaze from the window, slightly sideways, avoiding the pale arm of the Omega beside him, who had leaned towards him in panic. The room was filled with a constant clamor of voices, and the darkness was complete, with only the last flicker of cell phones and the occasional cigarette butt providing a glimmer of light. The power is out? Isn't there a backup power supply? Why hasn't it started yet? Go find your manager Chin and ask what's going on. The temperature is too low. The UPS won't start. There were hurried footsteps outside the box door, and a staff member's voice was anxiously shouting, "Don't worry, everyone. We are already assisting the equipment in heating up. It is expected that the power supply will be restored within 10 minutes. Fuck, 10 minutes? The coffee table was slammed, and Chu Jingyi heard his cousin He Yicheng cursing excitedly. What are you doing? How many times have I told you that nothing can go wrong today? You are turning a deaf ear to what I say, right? Tell that old guy Qin Yongliang to get out here. All right, Yicheng. It's not a big deal. The always good-tempered Lu Zi smiled and tried to smooth things over. He picked up the craft candle on the side and lit it. The candlelight illuminated the small space. Just light the candle first and wait a while. Isn't it quite romantic? A bunch of useless people. He Yicheng was still unwilling to accept it. He was the host, and Night City was under his name. It was inevitable that a good party would be ruined like this, which made him feel embarrassed. He shouted even more loudly. Unfortunately, the surroundings were in great chaos, and he had recently injured his throat, making his voice hoarse and unpleasant. His cursing could not be heard outside, but only hurt his own ears. Chu Jingyi was about to tell his cousin to shut up when he suddenly felt something warm squeeze under the coffee table and hug his legs. Dad. At this word, the people around him instantly quieted down. Lu Zi, standing across from them, pushed the candle over. Su Xingwen grabbed the candlestick and, in the dim light, examined the child at Chu Jingyi's lap. He shouted, "Whose child is this?" He then looked at Zhuang Kai, the only one of them who was married with children. You brought your son? Zhuang Kai scowled. Am I crazy? Who the hell brings a child to a nightclub? Yicheng grabbed the child by the belt of his filthy overalls and lifted him off his brother's lap. Where did this little beggar come from? Are you trying to scam me? The child's face was as dirty as a cat's, covered in dirt and snow. His forehead was bruised, and it was hard to make out his features. Only his large, round eyes shone with startling brightness. Those eyes! Chu Jingyi was startled, his mind racing. Before he could process them, he saw the child staring at him intently. He puffed his lips and shouted again. Dad! Because of the sudden silence in the box, the sound practically echoed in the air. This truly amused the frivolous young men. Su Xingwen, with a look of anticipation, nudged the impassive Chu Jingyi with his arm. Hey, Shu could this really be the playboy you've been keeping? Why is it you alone who's calling him Dad? Chu Jingyi frowned, but before he could say anything, He Yicheng retorted, What nonsense are you talking about? How could my brother do such a thing behind brother Qingyu's back? It was no secret in their circle that the second young master Chu had a special affection for Lan Qingyu, a member of the Lan family renowned for her beauty. His determination to marry no one but her was no secret. The Chu and Lan families had been friends for generations, and the two had known each other since childhood, forming a close bond. The second young master, deeply in love with his beloved for years, had always maintained a chaste demeanor, even at the occasional social engagement, maintaining a discreet demeanor and avoiding any scandals. But was this truly the case? Su Xingwen simply didn't believe it. After all, despite Lan Qingyu's unparalleled beauty, she was now a mere vegetable, bedridden for 7 or 8 years due to an accident, while the second young master Chu remained single and ostensibly lacked a single female confidant. He was a high-ranking alpha in his prime, and it wasn't as if he was suffering from some unspoken illness. Could he have truly remained chaste for all these years? At the very least, he must have had a consensual or even illicit one-night stand. He wasn't a monk, so why would he pretend to be a romantic saint? They all came from similar backgrounds and had a good relationship. However, Su Xingwen was inevitably a little resentful of Chu Er, the first of their generation of second-generation heirs to enter the family's inner circle and achieve a string of impressive accomplishments. He didn't harbor any ill intentions, merely the occasional barb, generally enjoying seeing him suffer a setback. So, seeing Chu Jingyi's displeasure, his mischievous thoughts surfaced again. He tapped the cheek of the scruffy little boy He Yicheng was holding. "Hey, kid, who's your mother?" The child said nothing, simply staring at Chu Jingyi intently, his eyes blazing like searchlights, as if he had seen something truly rare. He even tried to reach out a muddy paw to touch Chu Jingyi's face, his words stuttering with excitement. "Dad, Dad, I know your dad." Chu Jingyi leaned back on the sofa. His right hand, holding a cigarette, rested on the armrest. The flickering flame illuminated his eyes, as if lost in some subtle contemplation. He had long eyebrows, narrow eyes, a prominent nose, thin lips, and delicate, rich features, a striking, yet unfeeling appearance. His skin, much lighter than the average Asian's, took on a bloodless pallor in the candlelight, reminiscent of the enchanting spirits and ghosts in strange stories. Judging by his appearance alone, one could easily mistake him for a voluptuous Omega. But his aura was so imposing that it was impossible to harbor even the slightest disrespect. Under his cold gaze, the child, who had been excitedly shouting, subconsciously quieted down, revealing a hint of trepidation and fear. The atmosphere around them became oppressive. Zhuang Kai was a father after all. Seeing this, he felt a little sorry and advised, "Jingyi, don't scare the child. He must have recognized the wrong person. When the phone calls, ask the staff to take him to find the parents." He Yicheng wondered. "Strange. Where did this kid get in? The security in my store is not for decoration. Even if there is a power outage and we can't see clearly, we shouldn't let a little brat in." He happened to find the box on the top floor where they usually stayed when they had parties. And as soon as he arrived, he hugged the second young master Chu accurately. "Brother." He Yicheng's face became serious. "My uncle handed over Mingsheng to you. What do you think about the second house's opinion?" Chu Jingyi said lightly. "A family of parasites who live on stock dividends. What opinion can they have? It's hard to say." He Yicheng said, "Don't say someone is trying to make trouble deliberately. Isn't the Jingxi project at a critical juncture? It was originally approved because of the relationship with the Lan family. If you reveal an illegitimate child now, it's not that serious. Everyone knows that Lan Ji can sit in the position she is today thanks to the Chu family's behind-the-scenes arrangements for her. So how could they really turn against each other over such a small matter?" Quote, Su Xingwen was skeptical. The Lan family's rising political star had clearly tied the Chu family's ship to the gauntlet. Their prosperity and decline were intertwined. Even if Chu Er had a child out of wedlock, so what? It was said that Lan Ji had kept a beloved mistress in Wangjing, a secret from his family. Perhaps he'd also developed a certain sympathy for Chu Er's frivolous past, a sentiment shared by alphas. Lu Zi chuckled. "Then did you know that Deputy Mayor Lan, always so composed and unfazed, had only lost his composure a few times in all those years because of her beloved brother? That committee member the Zhao family had been promoting for the past 2 years. That incredibly young and beautiful Omega, Xingwen, do you know how he ultimately fell from power?" Su Xingwen honestly had no idea. But since things had come to that point, he could already guess about 80% of the way through. He simply smacked his lips and stopped shunning. Zhuang Kai stopped acting like a saint and said seriously, "Why don't we arrest this kid first and have someone investigate him thoroughly? We've been preparing for the Jingxi project for so long. We can't have any mistakes happen halfway." Quote, Liang Xiaoman. Suddenly, a breathless girl's voice was heard from outside the box. It was a girl of 7 or 8 years old. She was standing at the door, pointing at the child inside and turning her head to shout to someone behind her. "Sway sway, Mom, Xiaoman is here." Su Xingwen sneered. "Yicheng, this is our VIP box, right? Your management is not good. When there is a power outage, all kinds of cats and dogs can rush in. Tisk, it's outrageous. He couldn't help but say something mean. Little sister, ask your mother to come and play with you. He Chung was so ashamed that he stood up abruptly and got angry at the little girl who ran in rudely. Which little girl are you? His voice stopped abruptly, as if struck by a thunderbolt. He Chung's head buzzed. He stared at the little girl for a few seconds, then suddenly turned his head, his face filled with horror. Brother, she and you. Xiao Man. The girl had already run up to them. Her voice was nervous, but she politely bowed and apologized. I'm sorry, uncles. My brother was running around and disturbed you. I'll take him away right away. In the flickering candlelight, she hesitantly raised her head, revealing a face of breathtaking beauty. A face that bore an 80% resemblance to Chu Jingyi. Click. Lu Zi silently lit another candle, and now the view was even clearer. The little girl, even the red mole under her left eye, was identical to Chu Jingyi's. A dead silence filled the room, broken only by the sound of clattering in the corridor outside the box. As if someone was hurriedly approaching. It's hard to describe what that premonition was. Chu Jingyi unconsciously sat up straight, his gaze lingering for a second on the face that seemed almost a miniature version of himself. Then gently shifted his gaze toward the door. There were the sounds of chaotic footsteps, mixed with a distinctly male gasp. Could he hear gasps at this distance? He didn't know, but it seemed as if he did. A dull, lingering thump on his eardrums. The next moment, the lights flickered on, a brilliant radiance. Chu Jingyi instinctively squinted, his vision blurring. A hazy figure appeared in his blurred vision. Mom, the little girl called. Someone entered the private room, panting heavily, but speaking no words, silently approaching, drawing closer. Chu Jingyi blinked slowly, taking in the figure. Short black hair, clear black eyes, thick black eyebrows, a high, straight nose, full lips, and cheeks flushed with the color of intense exercise, creating a handsome face with blunt lines and a simple style. He was handsome, but also handsome in a way that was outdated, like a character from a rural drama from the last century. He stood about 5 feet 4 inches tall, his frame clearly visible beneath a thin, close-fitting jacket. He wore the indigo work uniform of a nightclub cleaning staff, his tanned skin smeared with sweat, and a heavy metal collar, now worn only by inferior omegas with poor pheromone control, was around his neck. Even as they entered social distance, they could already faintly detect the scent of his pheromones, a tasteless, inferior, and overpowering fragrance, as strong as the cheap, ubiquitous fragrances from a $2 store. The difference from the elegant and pleasant standards of the elite was far greater than a chasm, highlighting his ridiculously low status. Now, this Omega, who had stumbled into the gathering of the elite alphas, stood erect before them, his chest heaving, his expression bewildered and visibly uneasy. It was unclear whether it was from the long search or the fear of disturbing the distinguished guests in the private room. Or you meet someone you thought you would never see again in this life. Liang Sui had never imagined he'd see Chu Jingyi again in this lifetime. The tragic, resolute scene of their farewell seemed to resurface before his eyes. That enchantingly beautiful face that had captivated him the moment they first met, now radiating an even more unsettling allure in the interplay between memory and reality. Like a signal of impending danger, his hairs trembled, his mind was in a turmoil. His memories seemed to have been interrupted. A swirl of the usual snowy noise of an old television screen. Temporarily disconnected from the real world. When he came to his senses again, he had returned to the staff lounge in a daze. His tall and strong body stood against the wall, like a primary school student who had made a mistake. His 2 children cuddled up to him obediently. The 3 of them lowered their heads in unison, listening to the woman in the red supervisor's uniform in front of them scolding him. Liang Sui, how many times have I emphasized to you that you can't bring children in during working hours? I tried my best to cover up for you the few times Manager Chin caught you before. How come you still haven't learned your lesson at such an age? The guests who came today were all the ones the boss repeatedly told us to treat well. But you're so good. It's bad enough that you got lost when I told you to get a heating device. But your little troublemaker actually had the audacity to sneak into someone else's private room and cause trouble. If you can't control the children, lock them up at home and don't let them out. Not only are you causing trouble for yourself, but you're also making us suffer with you. It's the end of the month and you've done this to me. Okay, my bonus for this month is gone. If you don't want to do this anymore, just say so. Don't underestimate the fact that you're a temporary worker. I'm paying you 120 yuan a night and including a midnight snack. You, an inferior Omega with no education and no household registration, won't be able to find another job with this kind of treatment. Just wait, I won't care about you this time. Wait for Manager Chin to come over and fire you personally. Then you can go begging on the street with these two burdens. After enduring a solid half-hour of scolding, Liang Sui felt the scolding subside for a while. She carefully raised her head and looked pleadingly at the woman in front of her who was so angry that her face was red and her neck was thick. She made an apology gesture several times in a row. Liang Xiaoying also learned her lesson and immediately put on a pitiful expression to beg for mercy on her mother's behalf. Aunt Hong, I'm really sorry. My brother and I didn't want to disturb you. But the hail was so heavy that there was a big hole in the roof of our house. The house is full of water. It's so cold, we can't find any other place to hide from the rain. Liang Xiaoman also followed her sister and burst into tears. Her two dirty little hands, which were rubbing her eyes, were full of wounds. You can tell at a glance that she fell several times on the way here and her head was broken. She looked really pitiful. Zhou Hong's cheeks puffed up as she glared at the scantily clad brother and sister. Still furious, come on if you want to. Why aren't you just staying in the lounge waiting for the adults to get off work? You're running around, little brat. Do you know how much trouble you've caused? It's dark, so dark. I'm scared, woohoo. Zhou Hong's anger flared up again. You're still scared? Those people you bumped into today. Dang dang. There were two knocks on the lounge door. Manager Chin pushed it open a crack, his face gloomy as he waved at Zhou Hong. Manager Zhou, come out for a moment. Okay, I'll be right there. Zhou Hong smiled, but she glared fiercely at the two children in the room. She quickly walked out, slamming the door shut. Outside the corridor, a woman's hearty, flattering voice faded away with the sound of footsteps. Look, Manager Chin, this employee's situation is quite special. Her family's financial situation is very difficult, and raising two half-grown children on her own is no easy feat. Yes, I've already scolded him, and I promise it won't happen again. Liang Sui's nose felt sore, and he slowly squatted against the wall, his eyes fixed on the small patch of floor beneath his feet. Liang Xiaoying patted his shoulder. Don't worry, things haven't reached the worst yet. Maybe it's just a salary deduction. I've earned a few dozen yuan helping my classmates with their homework this semester. Here, I'll give it all to you. She pulled a small purse from her trouser pocket and stuffed it into Liang Sui's hand. The man's lip curled at her grown-up, steady tone. He didn't take the money from his daughter, but pushed the crudely stitched handmade purse back and said in sign language, "Keep it for yourself." Liang Xiaoman sniffled and nudged into his mother's arms. Mom, why didn't Dad come to see us? Doesn't he know we're here? Liang Sui's smile faltered, and the corners of her mouth slowly lowered. She shook her head at her son. He gestured. You recognized the wrong person. That uncle is not Dad. Liang Xiaoman's eyes widened. No, I didn't recognize him wrongly. He is Dad, exactly the same as in the photo. Liang Sui subconsciously grasped the watch chain hanging in front of her chest. Her throat dry, and she swallowed hard. He suddenly felt a little regretful. He shouldn't have taken out the photo when the children were clamoring for their dad. He shouldn't have left them with such an impossible wish. I just recognized the wrong person. He insisted. I didn't. Okay, Liang Xiaoman, can you stand up for yourself? Liang Xiaoying interrupted him, poking her brother's head with her finger. Her two thin eyebrows raised one high and one low, looking particularly disdainful. Dad, do you think he wants to recognize you? Aren't you ashamed? Liang Sui didn't know that in fact, she and her siblings had already recognized that there was a person in the group of guests in the top box who looked particularly like their father. Just last month, Liang Xiaoman had secretly tried to visit his father in the private room. But security was so tight that a little kid like him couldn't get in. He also didn't dare make a fuss, fearing his mother's job would be lost. Today, with the citywide power outage and the night in chaos, Liang Xiaoman had been waiting for his mother in the lounge with his sister. But when he heard the commotion outside, he suddenly had the urge to try his luck in that mysterious private room again. The boy bit his lower lip, tears welling in his eyes. But he didn't dwell on the topic. Liang Sui paused for a moment, then stood up, retrieved iodine and band-aids from the chest of drawers, and began treating the wounds on her son's face and hands. She pressed his stomach again. "Does it hurt? It'll go away after you take the medicine," Liang Sui said, finally relieved. 2 minutes later, the lounge door opened again. Zhou Hong walked in with a bad look on her face. "You are fired. Come and collect your salary for today." Liang Sui's cleaning job in Yedu was paid daily. He put away the red envelope containing his salary for today, bowed to Sister Hong, who had taken good care of him in the past few months, and prepared to leave with his 2 children. Zhou Hong stopped him. "Didn't Xiaoying say that your roof is leaking? Where are you going to stay tonight?" When they first came to Los Angeles, the 3 of them lived in a bridge hole for a while. And later they saved money to rent a bungalow in the urban village. Now the rental house is leaking, and the bridge hole is probably flooded. Liang Sui was distressed for a long time, took out a sticky note, wrote 3 words on it, and showed it to Zhou Hong. "Guest house." Zhou Hong wanted to roll her eyes again. There's no guest house in Los Angeles. There's only one in the old city, over 50 miles away. How are you going to get there? You can't even get a taxi in this weather. She cursed as she counted out a few large bills from her wallet and rudely stuffed them into Liang Sui's pockets. "There are a few affordable hotels across from Jinri Avenue. Take your 2 children and stay there for a few days. Remember to pay me back when you find a job." Liang Sui didn't take it, instead writing on a sticky note, "No, I can't pay it back." He truly couldn't pay it back. Living in Los Angeles isn't easy. Everything costs money. Fruits, vegetables, grains, and oils are all more expensive than in the countryside. Xiaoman needs medicine every day, and Xiaoying has to pay for textbooks next week. Plus, the hospital is pressing for money. His paycheck just gets passed around, and he can't keep it. He has no money to pay Hong Jia back. Zhou Hong, seeing his cowardly look, gets angry. "If you can't pay it back, then don't. Can I call the police on you for just a few hundred yuan? Get out of my sight." Finally, Liang Sui, pocketing his 120 yuan salary and the 700 yuan Hong Jia had lent him, walked out of the Yedu gates, holding his 2 children's hands. It was dark, the mains electricity still out, and only scattered lights could be seen from afar, likely from the backup power supply of some businesses. Without streetlights, the streets were still pitch black, like the gaping maw of a monster. Liang Sui had a mild case of night blindness, which made it difficult to see clearly in the dark, and he was somewhat afraid of the dark. The hail had stopped, but the rain hadn't stopped yet. He looked up at the sky, wondering when the moon would come out. With the moonlight shining, the road would be a little brighter. The weather forecast says it's going to be rainy and snowy today and tomorrow. Liang Xiaoying saw what her mother was thinking and immediately punctured his unrealistic fantasy. "Come on, I'll hold your hand and won't let you fall." Although they had enough money to stay in a hotel, they still had to go back to the rental house to pack their things. It would be troublesome if they lost some important documents and papers. And they also had to take Xiaoman's medicine with them. "It's so cold." Liang Xiaoman stamped her feet and jumped several times on the spot like a little rabbit. "We have to run, Mom, or we'll catch a cold." The 3 of them were all wearing thin, plain clothes, which were perfectly suitable for spring wear. But who could have imagined that there would be such a cold snap that would last for over a month? The temperature outside was almost as cold as in the coldest days of winter. As soon as they came out of the warm room, their body temperature began to drop rapidly. Soon, the 3 of them were shivering in the night wind. They really couldn't stand there like this anymore. Fortunately, the rain wasn't heavy, and the rental house wasn't too far from the store where he worked. So it shouldn't be a problem to get wet for a while. Liang Sui held the children's hands tightly, listened to her daughter's voice and said, "When I count to 1, we'll run together. 3, 2, before she could say 1. A soft male voice suddenly drowned her out. Liang Sui. It wasn't a very familiar voice. Liang Sui didn't actually recognize who was calling him at first, but his body had already shuddered spontaneously, and he turned his head blankly. He met a face that had stirred up a storm in his mind not long ago. "It really is you. Just now in the private room. I thought I was seeing things." Chu Jingyi smiled at him, his expression surprisingly gentle, as if old friends had reunited after many years. Polite yet distant. "Long time no see. How are you?" Liang Sui managed a muffled, the most he could manage in front of an outsider. His palms were slightly sweaty, and he felt like running away. "Dad." Liang Xiaoman opened his mouth, only to be slapped on the face by his sister. "Oops, there's a mosquito on your mouth." The young man seemed to have just noticed the two little ones beside him. He lowered his head and asked, "Are these your children?" Liang Sui nodded gently. "How old are they?" Liang Xiaoying answered for their mother. 7. Chu Jingyi waited a moment, then asked, "How old is your brother?" "Like me. We're twins." Chu Jingyi's face was filled with surprise, as if he hadn't expected these two children, who looked at least 2 or 3 years apart in height and build, to be twins. Liang Xiaoman finally pushed her sister's hand away, stammering a bit excitedly. "I was robbed of nutrients by Xiaoying in Mom's belly. She's tall, and I'm short. Mom." The young man chewed on the word slowly, his smile fading, a hint of cold sarcasm appearing. But his voice remained soft. "Who's your father?" The two children were stunned. Liang Sui didn't understand what the question was asking, or rather, what kind of answer he was hoping for. He had never been a bright man, and for a moment he was at a loss for words. Unsure how to respond, he could only stare blankly, just like he had done before, long ago, when Chu Jingyi had left him speechless, waiting for further instructions. "Could it be me?" Quote. He seemed a little nervous, his heart beating so fast that it hurt his chest. Liang Sui wanted to press his chest, perhaps to feel more at ease. But he was in Chu Jingyi's presence, and he was a little afraid of him, so he didn't reach out. He just lowered his head and listened quietly. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the person in front of him take a few steps closer. The shadow cast by the nearly 10-centimeter height difference fell on his head, heavy and oppressive, as if he were being enveloped and captured by something terrifying. After all, Chu Jingyi's voice dragged out, the incongruous softness and kindness completely stripped away, becoming cold, sharp, and extremely aggressive. It finally sounded like the voice of someone he was familiar with. "The 2 million back then should have covered your abortion costs." The patter of rain grew louder. The cold wind blew, and Liang Sui shivered. Then he sneezed, and then another, and another. 5 sneezes in total. "Oh, no." He panicked and quickly looked up. Sure enough, he saw a large, speckled patch of saliva on the chest of Chu Jingyi's obviously expensive cashmere coat. The young man's face was ashen. His thin lips were taut, and veins were faintly visible at his forehead. Liang Sui remembered that this person had a serious obsession with cleanliness. Just as she was about to apologize, she heard him say in an impatient voice that had stripped away all pretense of gentleness, "Get in the car." Question mark. "Get in the car," Chu Jingyi repeated, her pointed and beautiful chin raised slightly, pointing to a black SUV behind him. "Where are you going?" "I'll take you there. I have something else to talk to you about." It was midnight, and the power still hadn't been restored. Liang Sui regretted his decision shortly after getting in the car because of the traffic jam. The rental house wasn't far from Yedu as the crow flies. A shortcut would have taken about 20 minutes. But Chu Jingyi had to drive him along the main road, and the main thoroughfare was incredibly congested, completely blocking the entire street. It was said that a construction crew was working on a pipeline repair. The car had been able to move slowly at first, but now it had stalled completely and had to be parked on the side of the road. Liang Sui sat in the passenger seat and turned his head for the fifth time to look at the two children sleeping uncomfortably in the back seat. They were so young, and after the chaos of the previous night, they were already extremely sleepy. The car heater blew on them, and they yawned one after another. Shortly after getting in the car, they couldn't hold back and fell asleep, cuddling each other. Although the heat was sufficient, it was still a while before they got home, and sleeping like that would catch a cold. He hesitated for a moment, then gently tugged at the sleeve of the person in the driver's seat. The young man, who had been smoking silently by the car window, turned around and glanced at his slightly trembling fingers resting on his sleeve. He smiled softly, his meaning unclear. What? Liang Sui quickly withdrew her hand, gesturing for a blanket to cover the children. Xu Jingyi looked at him for a few seconds, then tilted his head and asked, "Why aren't you talking?" Since they'd met, Liang Sui hadn't said a single word to him, save for the muffled half-word he'd uttered when he'd called out to him in the parking lot. Psychogenic aphasia doesn't mean a complete loss of language. Liang Sui was introverted and mostly silent, but Xu Jingyi knew he could still speak, at least to say his own name fully and accurately. It was like the low, timid, annoying Jingyi that had lingered in his ears every day for so many years. Liang Sui blinked in confusion, his already large eyes widening even wider, as if trying to process the meaning behind the question, not the question itself. He quickly pulled out the sticky note he always carried and wrote on it, "Please give me a blanket." It seemed Xu Jingyi asked because he couldn't understand his hand gestures. But he seemed to have forgotten that Xu Jingyi was supposed to know sign language. He had been taught it bit by his clumsy but dedicated teacher. Xu Jingyi didn't even glance at the sticky note held in front of him. His light amber eyes looked down at him, a smile that was both playful and mocking on his lips. "If you don't tell me, how can I know what you want?" The eager, pleading look on Liang Sui's face stiffened for a moment. This time, he understood Xu Jingyi's malicious intentions. The arm holding the sticky note slowly lowered, and the man lowered his head, his thick, short eyelashes drooping, hiding the emotion in his eyes. He stopped his futile efforts and unbuttoned his coat. Xu Jingyi raised an eyebrow, also understanding this silent resistance. It was strange that this guy, who was always so cowardly and humble in his memory, could actually show such a tough side in front of him. No, maybe it wasn't the first time. The rustling sound of fabric rubbing against each other came from the side, pulling his attention back from the memory fragment that just emerged. Xu Jingyi folded his arms and watched coldly as Liang Sui struggled to turn over from above the seat, stretched out his arms, and put his coat on the two children in the backseat in a rather awkward posture. The interior space of the Maybach GLS 600 was spacious enough. But he was a sturdy adult man after all, and he didn't know how to adjust the seat height, nor did he know how to unbuckle the seatbelt, so it was not easy to move around. Just a little bit more. Liang Sui took a breath. He had leaned over the back of the seat, his waist twisting into a deep, inward angle as he leaned forward, his curves defined from waist to hip. His buttocks, bulging beneath his tight trousers, were so tight that the soft trembling of his muscles was visible. In the confined space, the sweet, always difficult to receive pheromone scent of his body became even more pronounced. Did he notice? This vulgar, alluring aroma permeated the entire cabin, like a clumsy, shameless seduction of the only alpha present. Quote! Liang Sui's body jumped at the sudden, unfamiliar touch, and he lost his grip on his jacket, dropping it between the seats. He turned around, stunned, staring at the young man leaning over and rubbing his arm across his hips. Undisguised panic filled his eyes, and his lips moved slightly, but no sound came out. Xu Jingyi's expression remained calm as he pressed the passenger seat adjustment button. With a subtle hum, the motor began to work smoothly, slowly moving the seat back, creating slightly more space. "You're welcome," he said politely, withdrawing his hand. The sleeve of his jacket brushed against Liang Xiaoying's leg, startling her awake. She dazedly opened one eye, muttered, and grabbed her jacket, draping it around herself and her brother. She soon fell back asleep. Liang Sui paused for a moment, then slowly turned back around. Without reacting further to the unexpected incident, she quietly settled back into her seat. Beneath his jacket was a thin, short-sleeved top. It was a plain black. The fabric seemingly ordinary. His full, firm chest muscles curved and undulated, like a mountain ridgeline stretching through the misty late spring rain. The curves were gentle, not the exaggerated hardness of a man who overworks himself, but rather a subtle, almost sexual quality. For an inferior Omega, this was a marginal advantage that might attract an alpha. However, for a superior alpha with high self-control, that was all. Still lacking self-awareness. A few irritating horns blared outside the car window. They had been stuck here for nearly 40 minutes. Xu Jingyi rested his left arm on the window, chin propped up, his gaze fixed on the man, who was growing increasingly nervous under his gaze. After a long pause, he finally sighed. "Why did you come to me? Didn't we agree not to see each other again?" Liang Sui straightened his back like a schoolboy being called on by his teacher. Summoning his courage, he raised his eyes to meet the other's scrutinizing gaze and shook his head earnestly. "I wasn't looking for you." Even without the gestures or the sticky note, Xu Jingyi understood his meaning. Perhaps he was trying to say that today's reunion was just a coincidence. In this international city with a permanent population of nearly 30 million. On an ordinary yet unexpected night. A fateful coincidence. After smiling noncommittally, the young man asked again, "What's wrong with the child?" Liang Sui swallowed, not knowing how to react. "It must be tough, raising two kids on your own," Xu Jingyi muttered, his tone softening again. "I heard you didn't continue your studies. Was it because of the kids?" The fingers resting on his thigh trembled, and the man pursed his lips. The air in the car suddenly grew thinner, and he was a little breathless. A moment's silence passed, and no one spoke, until Xu Jingyi asked again, "So, why did you ask for trouble?" If you had listened to me and gotten the abortion, without these two burdens, at least you wouldn't be in this situation today. Burden? Somehow, he felt as if he had been pricked by the cold word. The pain wasn't intense, but the aftertaste lingered, as if a small insect had burrowed into the pinhole-sized wound, nibbling at his flesh as it crawled, leaving a dull ache along its path. "They're not a burden," Liang Sui gestured with trembling fingers, trying to change this cruel verdict. "Xiaoying and Xiaoman are my treasures." He felt very happy to have given birth to them and raised them, giving up some things to gain others. This is how life should be. He never regretted his original choice. "So stupid," Xu Jingyi said softly. He seemed to be truly confused, and every word that came out of his mouth sounded sincere. The kind of sincerity that was extremely humiliating. "Liang Sui, why have you always been so stupid?" Every step was a misstep, digging a hole for himself. After all these years, there was no progress. A single Omega with two children, and a low-quality person like you, can actually live a stable life until now, and even come to Luo City again. To be honest, I am also surprised. Xu Jingyi's words became sharp. Each word was like a knife, but his voice was gentler. "Do you like me so much? Huh? Even if you are abandoned by me, you still want to give birth to my child, even if your life will be messed up? Why are you so stubborn? Is it for that illusory thought of love? Or the possibility of entering the Chu family one day? You don't really have such a stupid idea? Didn't I tell you a long time ago, when you first started pestering me, that there was no possibility between us?" The sarcasm, sharp and harsh enough to rip a man's skin off, continued to press forward, laced with a limited amount of pity. As the distance between them suddenly closed, it suddenly reached his ears. "You're almost 30. Can you stop dreaming?" Liang Sui shrank back abruptly, reaching out to cover his earlobe, which had turned red from the scorching breath. His other hand rested on the other's shoulder and pushed. Xu Jingyi's body remained motionless. "I won't acknowledge these two children." Liang Sui lowered his head even more. He wanted to nod to show that he had no objection, but his drooping chin was immediately clamped by two cold fingers, forcing him to look up and stare into that cold, ruthless, and gorgeous face, without the slightest escape. "I'm doing this for your own good." Liang Sui, don't harbor illusions about me. Don't do such futile and meaningless things. You should have known long ago that the idea of a mother's status being elevated by her son doesn't work in my family. Qingyu's condition has improved significantly in recent years. The doctor says she'll wake up within 2 or 3 years. Then I'll fulfill my engagement with the Lan family. The only way the Chu family's heir can come from his belly. Do you understand? Liang Sui's eyes flushed, and his nose swelled with sourness. Chu Jingyi's force was so strong that it felt like the bones in his jaw were shattering. The pain radiated from the area of his jaw, spreading across his entire face. He was pinned down, unable to nod, so he could only move his stiff tongue with all his might, forcing a muffled sob from the depths of his throat. In that instant, the previously dim street suddenly brightened as bright as day. A brilliant, cold light from an LCD sign on the roadside shone on his unprotected pupils. Stinging, and warm liquid dripped from his eyes. With a click, the burnt hand curled up, paused, and then quickly retracted. The road had finally cleared. The traffic began to slowly shift. A cacophony of horns, whistles, and voices swirling around. The surroundings were in a chaos even greater than before, but a positive one that offered hope. The Maybach restarted and merged with the traffic. 5 minutes later, Chu Jingyi parked where the navigation system had directed him, a dilapidated, spiderweb-like cluster of urban villages. Beyond that, the road was impassable for cars. You live in a place like this? He frowned, his critical gaze sweeping over the drainage pipes, nearly destroyed by months of torrential rain, and the piles of vegetable leaves, sewage, and other garbage. His disgust was evident. What's the difference between this and living in a garbage can? Liang Sui was busy waking her children, still sound asleep in the backseat, and had no time to react to the question or insult. Chu Jingyi raised his voice. When do you plan to leave Los Angeles? He was confident he'd made his point clear. No matter how many fanciful ideas Liang Sui had harbored before, they should have come to their senses by now. He wouldn't give her any chance to take advantage. If you're not satisfied with the compensation you received back then, I can increase it. Chu Jingyi pulled a check from his pocket, signed it, and handed it to Liang Sui. The amount on it startled Liang Sui, and his eyes widened again. Liang Sui's heartbeat quickened. He truly needed the money, desperately. But Chu Jingyi made it clear. This money was compensation for him to take his children out of Los Angeles and return home. He couldn't yet. Liang Sui sighed deeply and shook his head at Chu Jingyi, indicating he wasn't willing to accept the offer. The young man stared at him intently for a moment, then sneered. Whatever. He'd done his best. Stepping out of the warm car, Liang Sui and the children shivered. After taking off the jacket that at least provided protection from the wind, goosebumps quickly appeared on the exposed skin. He stopped Liang Xiaoman, who was sneezing and trying to take off her jacket and return it to him. Just as he was about to run home holding the hands of the 2 children, he was suddenly stopped by Chu Jingyi. Take this and wear it. The young man pointed at the cashmere coat draped over the rear armrest with a cold expression. It's stained with dirt, and I won't wear it a second time. Liang Sui recalled her 5 earth-shattering sneezes and embarrassedly made 2 gestures of apology and thanks. Then she picked up the coat that was obviously expensive, nodded, and said goodbye to the other party. The handmade brand name coat was of course not the right size, but it could protect against some of the cold wind when worn, bringing some precious warmth. Liang Sui wore his coat inside out, unbuttoned and with the front open. He held the 2 children in his arms, one on each side, tucked into his coat, and staggered toward the grimy alleyway before him. As he turned the corner, he heard the sound of a car engine starting. He instinctively turned back to see Chu Jingyi's impressive car driving away, his figure gradually fading into the vibrant neon lights. A world so completely different from his own. A world where his and hers would likely never intersect again. At 9 o'clock in the evening, a charity dinner was drawing to a close in the banquet hall of the Pearl Tower Central Hotel in Los Angeles. Chu Jingyi slowly exhaled a puff of smoke. Standing upright on the terrace with a wide view, he quietly overlooked the dazzling lights on both sides of the Ming River 100 feet below. He did not change his posture for a long time, as if he had completely immersed himself in this deep and low-key night scene. The glass door behind him was pushed open, and footsteps could be heard slowly, stopping beside him. "Are you hiding out here alone?" Chu Jingyi didn't turn around, but only glanced at the person out of the corner of his eye and said, as a greeting. Zhuang Kai also lit a cigarette, put his arm on the railing, and smiled at him. "Your cousins have been looking for you downstairs for a long time. And they look very anxious. What's going on?" Chu Jingyi took another deep puff of his cigarette. Although his expression did not change, he could still see a cold impatience. "What else could it be?" he said wearily. "I wonder where they've gotten into trouble again. I'll have to clean up their mess." Along with the power of the Chu family passing to Chu Jingyi, came the unshakable responsibility of caring for the family's legions of sycophants. With a large family and a wealth of wealth, and a throng of wealthy and extravagant young men, besides managing Mingsheng's daily affairs, he also had to find time to clean up after these useless relatives with their maxed-out skills. Life for the second young master Chu was far from easy. "Don't worry about them. Tell the security to kick them out." Zhuang Kai asked curiously. "Are you really just going to leave them alone? Then will your old man ever let you off the hook?" Chu Jingyi sneered. "Not dead, just a lesson for these good-for-nothings. Stop sitting around all day thinking about how to cause me trouble." The night breeze blew gently, feeling cool and comfortable on his skin. Zhuang Kai didn't rush back. The two chatted for a while, then returned to business. As they chatted, Zhuang Kai noticed something was off about Chu Jingyi. He couldn't suppress the irritation on his face, and even his pheromones seemed to leak for a few seconds due to his emotional fluctuations. The salty, astringent, and bitter smell of the sea surged out, and the entire semi-open terrace felt like it was experiencing a miniature tsunami. "Wow, what a strong smell." Alphas instinctively repel each other's pheromones. Zhuang Kai suppressed the urge to vomit and pressed the ventilation button on the wall, looking him up and down disapprovingly. "Jingyi, your disorder is getting worse. Don't tell me you really plan to hold out until Qingyu wakes up." Adult alphas who lack the comfort of omega pheromones for a long time will inevitably develop symptoms of pheromone imbalance, which commonly manifests as a stressful state of uncontrolled negative emotions such as irritability, restlessness, excitement, and irritability. However, this is not actually a disease at all. Simply find a decent omega to sleep with and exchange pheromones with, and you'll instantly feel refreshed and all your symptoms will disappear. This wasn't the era of decades ago when the Ao-gender ratio was severely unbalanced. With Chu Jingyi's status and position, finding a few highly compatible omegas was a piece of cake. Over the years, countless people had waited to serve him, and countless others had flattered him, both openly and covertly, but he didn't want any of them. No matter how many admirers threw themselves at him, he remained unmoved, his heart single-mindedly guarding his unconscious fiancée. "Qingyu isn't such a naive person," Zhuang Kai advised kindly. "This is just a temporary solution. Even if he finds out in the future, he won't blame you." Of the three sexes, alphas possess the strongest and most difficult to control animalistic instincts. Prolonged repression would likely lead to not only physical but also psychological problems. Chu Jingyi was obviously used to dealing with such situations. He asked the waiter to bring an inhibitor and injected himself skillfully. "It's not Qingyu's business. I'm just not in the mood." Zhuang Kai looked at him for a long time and asked suddenly, "Whose business is it?" Chu Jingyi paused, his thick and long eyelashes like butterfly wings slightly raised, his eyes very cold. "It's no one's business." Zhuang Kai smiled. "Xingwen, that kid, has been jumping around a lot these 2 days, looking for people everywhere to investigate the omega in the box that night. He is your, an old acquaintance, right?" Chu Jingyi did not answer, threw the empty syringe into the trash can, with no expression on his face, making it impossible to tell what his mood was at the moment. "You know Xingwen has never been very respectful of you and is always looking to make you unhappy. If there's anything you don't want him to dig up, you'd better be careful. That kid is just as good at getting into trouble as your cousins." "Just him?" Chu Jingyi sneered. "He's an idiot. I don't want to bother with him." Zhuang Kai gently reminded him. Don't take it lightly. As the saying goes, it's not the bad guys who are scheming, but the fools who have a sudden idea. I know what I'm doing. Thanks. When they returned to the banquet hall, the guests had already started to leave. Chu Jingyi glanced at the clock in the hall. It was not yet 9:30, which was still before his usual bedtime. What are your plans? Zhuang Kai casually asked, replying to a message on his phone. Lu Zi and the others are hanging out at a nearby pub. Wanna go? Chu Jingyi said. No, I'm back at the office. Working overtime again? Yeah, I'm just sitting around. Before he could even finish the last word, Chu Jingyi paused, staring intently in a certain direction for a moment. Suddenly, without a word, he strode off in that direction. Hey, where are you going? Chu Jingyi ignored him, walked straight up to a young man who was about to leave, and called out to him rudely. Hey, you, stop. The man turned his head, and the slight confusion and dissatisfaction on his face quickly turned into surprise the moment he saw Chu Jingyi clearly. He subconsciously stood up straight, almost flattered. Second Master Chu, you called me? Chu Jingyi remembered him. He was a wealthy businessman who had previously collaborated with Mingsheng's branch companies. Chu Jingyi's expression was indistinguishable. His gaze fell on the familiar coat he was wearing. After a few seconds, he asked in a deep voice, Where did you get this? Huh? The man was stunned for a moment. Clearly unresponsive, he hesitated for a moment before answering tentatively. Are you asking about this Loro Piana coat? Or the pants? Oh, the coat. I bought it at a store on Yangchue Road. He was baffled, unable to fathom the second young Master Chu's intention in calling him. Could it be that he'd taken a fancy to his coat and wanted the same one? But didn't these young masters all wait for the brands to deliver their new releases to their doorsteps every season? Why would they condescend to ask him in person? Chu Jingyi looked at the frivolous-looking young man before him. The coat he was wearing was a rare Loro Piana Spring Limited Edition color, and fewer than 10 were available in Asia to exclusive members of the brand's private club. How could a private store in the lower-end shopping districts of Yangchue Road possibly have access to it? Which store? He asked. I think it was called Shi. Yeesh? The man struggled to recall, his expression uneasy. Sorry, second young Master Chu, I can't quite remember. I just remember it was a second-hand luxury goods store, and their manager contacted me. He couldn't help but sigh. I didn't expect a small roadside shop could sell such a limited edition luxury item. I heard the seller had only worn it for less than 2 weeks when he sold it, and it looked like new. And the price hadn't increased much. Second young Master Chu? Chu Jingyi didn't wait for him to finish before grabbing him by the back of the collar. With a rather rude gesture, he flipped open the collar of his coat and carefully examined the serial number sewn inside. The man didn't dare to argue with Chu Jingyi about respect, standing stiffly in place, waiting for him to examine him, his mind racing with thoughts. Could there be something wrong with the coat? Could it be stolen goods? Had a servant stolen second young Master Chu's clothes and resold them? No one would be so audacious, would they? He must not get himself into trouble. He truly knew nothing. After a long moment, until his calves were stiff from standing so tense, the unfortunate man finally heard the young man beside him laugh. The laughter was soft and gentle, like a spring breeze brushing against willow branches. Yet somehow it made him feel uneasy. Very good. This guy. As expected, he hasn't changed at all. At 4:30 on Wednesday afternoon, at the end of school, there was a regular knock on the door of the teacher's office at Bailongwen Elementary School. Teacher Shu, the homeroom teacher of Class 2, Grade 3, was busy grading homework when she heard a knock on the door. Without even looking up, she said, "Come in." The door swung open, and Liang Xiaoying and Liang Xiaoman, each holding their mother's hand, entered, each greeting them with a crisp, "Hello, Teacher Shu." "Hey, it's Xiaoying and Xiaoman." Seeing her class's 2 most promising students, Teacher Shu's usually serious face cracked with a smile. Who is this? A faint, sweet, inferior scent lingered in the air, and she paused. She took in the taller and more robust man at the desk. Taller than an average alpha, before hesitantly confirming his identity from the protective collar around his neck. He was an inferior Omega whose appearance, figure, and pheromone profile severely defied the current Omega aesthetic standards. Is that Xiaoying's mother? Teacher Shu hid the slight contempt and pity in her eyes very well, and casually stretched out her hand to push open the window, letting the cloying fragrance dissipate. Is there anything wrong? Liang Sui saw her avoidance clearly, and felt a little embarrassed. The necklace he was wearing now was too old-fashioned, with average protection effect, and its ability to control pheromones was only slightly better than his own, which made him embarrassed in public many times. After the children's schooling matters were settled, he must save money to buy a new model of necklace. Thinking of this, Liang Sui handed over the supporting documents she had prepared in advance. And Liang Xiaoying said on his behalf, Teacher Shu, my mother wants to transfer Xiaoman and me to another school. Could you please stamp it? Transfer? Teacher Shu was surprised. She had a general understanding of the family situation of this brother and sister. They were single Omega from outside the city, raising a pair of children on their own. They had no proper job or housing, and could not afford the deposit. Naturally, they could not apply for a formal residence permit in Los Angeles. They only had a short-term temporary residence permit issued by the municipal government to temporary workers. Xiaoying and Xiaoman, the two talented children, could only study in this private elementary school specially opened for children of migrant workers. We want to transfer to No. 1 City Elementary School. Liang Xiaoman blinked her large, black grape-like eyes. When you finish your rotation, Teacher Shu, and return to No. 1 City Elementary School to teach, Xiaoying and I will continue to be your students. Teacher Shu's heart softened, and she patted his head. Then, looking at Liang Sui, her eyes softened. Xiaoying's mom, if we can transfer to a public school, it will certainly be very beneficial for our two children's studies and future advancement. However, without a Los Angeles hukou or residence permit, No. 1 City Elementary School might have difficulty accepting us. Her words were euphemistic, but the meaning was clear. An inferior Omega like Liang Sui, who couldn't provide legal and stable proof of employment and residency, would likely face a reprimand or even forced deportation once her temporary residence permit expired. Los Angeles public schools wouldn't approve Xiaoying and her brother's application. Xiaoying's mom must have understood this. Liang Sui certainly did. He rummaged through the pile of documents he'd brought with him, pulling out a brand new, bank card-sized card. He pushed it toward Teacher Shu, gesturing, I have a residence permit. Teacher Shu was startled. Deaf-mute? No, he could hear her. Probably just not speak. Looking at his handsome, unassuming face, the woman felt even more pity. Sighing silently, she didn't know sign language, and only when she looked down and saw the words, Los Angeles residence permit, on the card did she understand what he meant. Her eyes widened in surprise. You have a residence permit? The documents Xiaoying and her brother had submitted for enrollment only included a temporary residence permit valid for a year and a half. Liang Sui smiled shyly. He also realized the teacher didn't understand sign language, so he wrote on a sticky note, just got it, paid a 200.000 yuan deposit. It's a real permit. Afraid Teacher Shu would think he was a traitor, he pointed out the stamp on the photo section of his ID card. Teacher Shu looked at the stamp, then at Liang Sui, with a scrutinizing look in his eyes. He nodded, but never gave a definite answer. 200,000, even for ordinary citizens in Los Angeles, is not a small amount of money that can be taken out easily. Let alone an inferior Omega who is restricted and discriminated against everywhere. In this world, the path left for these inferior genders is really too narrow. Could it be that this seemingly honest single mother is also engaged in some special industry that is despised by people like her peers? We are rich. Perhaps the surprise on Teacher Shu's face was too obvious. Liang Xiaoman puffed out her chest, and with 3 parts of pride and 3 parts of showing off, she loudly emphasized, this is the money given by my father. Liang Sui turned her head in surprise, looking at her son with a look full of blame. Liang Xiaoman shrank his neck, knowing that he had gotten into trouble again. It seemed that his mother was reluctant to let outsiders know the relationship between them and their father. So she cleverly changed the subject. Uncle, It was my uncle who gave the money. Liang Sui shook her head and gestured at him seriously. It's not his money. It's not Chu Jingyi's money. It's Liang Sui's money. Chu Jingyi gave the code to Liang Sui. So the code belonged to Liang Sui. How could he say that the money he got from selling his own things was given by Chu Jingyi? But that's Dad. Uncle. Liang Xiaoman wanted to refute. But her sister raised her hand and hit her on the head. She was in so much pain that she burst into tears and finally covered her mouth and dared not say a word. Teacher Shu listened from the side and tasted something. And the unspeakable suspicions in her heart dissipated a little. The one who gave the money was probably Xiaoying's mother's suitor. Fortunately, it was not what she had thought before. Otherwise, as a teacher, she couldn't pretend not to know. Otherwise there would be trouble later. Is that so? Okay, I understand the situation. Let me take a look. Teacher Shu felt relieved, flipped through the stack of materials, and first stamped the transfer application form. Seeing that there was also a transfer application form for the number 1 city primary school. He pondered for a moment, made a phone call, and then said to Liang Sui, Xiaoying's mother, the number 1 city primary school has recruited a lot of students this year. And the admission quota is full. Liang Sui was stunned and didn't react when he went to the number 1 city primary school to inquire. The other party only said that his children did not have the qualifications for admission. Liang Sui thought that as long as he got all the certification materials as they said, he could send his children to study. Who would have thought that there would be such a thing as admission quotas? The person in the office didn't say that there would be a limit on the number of places. He thought for a while and wrote on the sticky note, then go to other schools. Number 2 primary school. Number 3 primary school. Teacher Shu hesitated. Xiaoying's mom, I don't mean to discourage you. But in your situation, it's going to be very difficult for your child to attend a regular public school. You know how omegas like you are always stuck, right? From work, housing, children's education. Every aspect of society imposes strict barriers on inferior omegas. In most cases, they are not considered individuals with independent personalities or civil rights. The notion that inferior omegas must rely on alphas to lead a normal life has become increasingly unshakable in recent decades. Teacher Shu hinted that the man in front of him should first find a way to secure an alpha who would pay him a deposit. Even if marriage wasn't an option, having an alpha on his side would make everything much easier. But whether it was because she didn't express her meaning clearly, or the other party was unwilling to entrust her life to others easily, or there were other difficulties, Liang Sui did not react at all, but stubbornly wrote on the sticky note, there are many elementary schools in Los Angeles, and there will be extra places. It's not about the quota. Teacher Shu smiled bitterly, thought for a while, and said to Liang Sui, let me tell you the truth. Xiaoying's mother, you don't have a spouse. And no public elementary school in Los Angeles will accept your children. How about this? We don't work hard on public schools. Seeing his anxious face, Teacher Shu reached out and pressed down, signaling him to calm down. Listen to me first. What I mean is, since our children are so outstanding, there is no need to focus on public schools. She looked at Liang Sui and smiled. Perhaps the educational methods of some private schools might be more suitable for children? Liang Sui didn't understand, so Liang Xiaoying asked, Teacher Shu, which school is it? Teacher Shu rummaged through a pile of documents on a nearby printer, found a copy of last year's admissions brochure, and handed it to Liang Xiaoying. Have you heard of Shija International School in Los Angeles? The girl thought for a moment and asked in confusion. Is it the filming location of the movie, A Time to Live and a Time to Die? Isn't that a high school? Teacher Shu said. It also has an elementary school. Shija is a K-9 education system with direct transitions from elementary school to middle school and high school. They advocate elite education and focus on cultivating students' qualities. The teacher thinks it is more suitable for children like you. Students who are too smart tend to be out of touch and lose themselves in ordinary schools. Teacher Shu sincerely hopes that these 2 children will have a better future. Take a good look, Xiaoying. If you have any questions, ask me. Xiaoying's mom? What's wrong? Teacher Shu glanced curiously at Liang Sui, who seemed to be hesitant to speak. Do you have any questions about Shija? Liang Sui pursed her lips and glanced awkwardly at her daughter, who was flipping through the admissions brochure with great interest. After a moment's hesitation, she finally shook her head. Never mind. Liang Xiaoying quickly flipped through the brochure, looked up, and spoke calmly to Teacher Shu. Well, I took a look. I'm quite interested in the multicultural program. Is the tuition expensive? It's expensive, but if Xiaoying goes, she can apply for a tuition waiver. Teacher Shu pointed to the gender column on Liang Xiaoying's profile. The asterisk, excellent alpha, brought a proud smile to her face. Although Xiaoman is a beta and has some serious academic biases, her individual grades are excellent. I heard from Teacher Chin that Xiaoman is now doing advanced Olympiad math problems. Liang Xiaoman nodded shyly, a little proudly. Teacher Shu smiled with satisfaction. It's good to specialize in one subject. Shija will plan a more suitable education for Xiaoman. If you're interested, I have 2 recommended places. Xiaoman doesn't have to worry about tuition either. She can apply for grants. And if her grades are excellent, she can even receive scholarships, which will cover most of her expenses for the semester. Liang Xiaoying asked her brother, "How are you? Are you okay?" Liang Xiaoman nodded vigorously. "No problem. Okay, Shija then, thanks to Teacher Shu." And with just a few words, the school was decided. Even as the children led them out of the school gate, Liang Sui's mind was still in a daze. He looked from his daughter to his son. They were chatting about the things they needed to prepare for school next week. And neither of them noticed his distraction. "Xiaoman, how are your Chinese and English lessons going? Can you get 300 next time?" Maybe. Quote, maybe? Sui spends thousands of yuan every month on tutoring for you. And you only manage an approximate score? Seriously, is math your only talent? If you fail 2 more subjects on the Shija entrance exam, you'll stay at Bailongwen Primary School by yourself. I won't wait for you. No, I won't fail. Xiaoying and I are going to Shija together. A brick and earth truck passed by, kicking up a cloud of dust that made the 3 of them cough. Go that way. There's so much dirt here. Bailongwen Primary School, located on a street near a large industrial park to accommodate migrant workers, is a bit out of the way and the environment is poor. The air pollution is severe. When the wind blows, the whole street is filled with smoke and dust, and the playground is covered in a thick layer of soot. Fortunately, he will soon be able to send his children to the school that normal children should attend. Although it was that Shija, the elementary school and middle and high school departments were not on the same campus. And so much time had passed. Sui, what are you staring at? Liang Xiaoying finally noticed his absent-mindedness. They had just entered an alley, and before she could see her mother's reply, she felt her body being pulled to a halt. She looked up in confusion, only to see Liang Sui's jawline tense, her Adam's apple rolling up and down, her eyes staring straight ahead. There, at the end of this brick and stone road, which was bumpy due to years of disrepair, a skinny, short man yawned and walked unsteadily, as if he was drunk. The strong smell of alcohol mixed with the pungent smell of pheromones wafted over from afar, making the mother and son wrinkle their noses at the same time. It was an alpha. Liang Sui was about to enter estrus and instinctively resisted the approach of the strange alpha. The drunk, perhaps drunk or otherwise, began stumbling along, scattering his pheromones as if no one was around, filling the alley with a pungent odor. Liang Xiaoying glared at the man with disdain at his behavior, reminiscent of a stray dog urinating in a circle. She stepped in front of her mother and brother, acting as their protector. "Come on, move in. It stinks." Liang Xiaoman huffed in disdain. "Like fermenting garbage. If it stinks, just shut up and don't talk." Liang Sui covered her mouth and nose, frowning as she slowly exhaled. Inferior omegas have little resistance to alpha pheromones. Whether forced into estrus or forced into it, it's extremely dangerous for these vulnerable individuals, who have no means of self-preservation. If Liang Sui hadn't known that most alphas look down on big and strong omegas like him, he really wanted to turn around and find a safer way to go with his 2 children. However, at this time, the next bus would arrive soon. If they missed it, they would have to wait for another 40 to 50 minutes. After all, this place was not in the city center. and it would be even more unsafe after dark. Sui Sui? So, Liang Sui didn't show any abnormality in the end. He just smiled at his daughter's concern, held the children's hands, and pretended not to see the drunkard, and hurried forward along the wall. Just as they were about to pass each other, Liang Sui suddenly felt an unfamiliar pheromone quickly wrap around the back of her neck, rubbing against the gland protected by her collar several times in an extremely obscene manner. At the same time, someone twisted her buttocks hard. Her body suddenly bounced up. Liang Sui turned her head sharply, and was met with the drunk's lewd face with a chuckle. Inferior, hiccup, inferior omega, ownerless? Her bloodshot eyes drooped to the plump flesh that felt so good to the touch. Her lips pursed, and she whistled a strangely tuned whistle. Liang Sui glared at the man, his chest heaving violently, his breathing rapid, clearly infuriated by the sudden affront. But after careful consideration, he decided not to cause trouble. He ignored the man's inane talk and dragged the children away. Liang Xiaoying was dragged along for 2 steps. She looked at her mother, then at the alpha, who had stopped dead in his tracks, his finger pressed to his nose. Intoxicated by the scent, suddenly, she understood. He took advantage of you. Her expression changed instantly. Despite her petite stature, the aura she exuded was fierce and violent, like an enraged she-wolf. Liang Xiaoying shook off her mother's hand and strode towards the audacious, drunken scoundrel, but Liang Sui grabbed her arm. Let's go. The man's face paled, his pupils trembling slightly, as if he had been greatly frightened. And it seemed that it was not just because of this relatively mild act of molestation. Liang Xiaoying noticed something was wrong with him, but she didn't bother to find the culprit. She frowned and asked, "What's wrong with you? Is there something wrong with that person?" She looked up thoughtfully, and happened to see the drunk man looking straight at her, his eyes fixed on Liang Sui, as if he was trying to remember something. And the drunkenness in his eyes had dissipated a little. After a while, he actually staggered towards them and shouted incoherently, Wait, you, that Omega, I think I've seen you somewhere." Liang Sui pretended not to hear and ignored her daughter's suspicious questioning. She pulled her and Xiaoman and hurried forward, as if there was a flood or a beast chasing them. After all, children are quick to forget. The incident that day was quickly forgotten amidst the chores surrounding the transfer and move. With the help of teacher Shu, the transfer was finalized without much hassle. The siblings were placed in the same class, and Xiaoman's scholarship application was approved, so school would only start the following Monday. After paying the deposit, Liang Sui still had around 100.000 yuan left from selling the designer coat. She deposited some money into the hospital account and bought Xiaoman 2 courses of medication. The remaining amount went to Liang Sui's new home, paying the entire year's rent in one go. The landlord gave her a discount, saving her hundreds of yuan compared to their previous rent, which was paid in March. The new home, a 1-bedroom apartment in a residential complex, was a bit older, but immaculately kept, with no hard-to-clean stains in the corners. It also had a large balcony, providing excellent natural light. The 3 of them were delighted. After spending 2 days over the weekend moving and doing a thorough cleaning, everything was finally packed by 5 or 6 p.m. on Sunday. Liang Sui, too exhausted to lift a finger, collapsed onto the newly upholstered sofa and fell asleep. Xiaoying and her brother were equally exhausted, each nestling in their mother's arms. But sleep wasn't in the least bit arousing. They chattered excitedly about their new home. Liang Xiaoman's face lit up. "The bed in the bedroom is so huge, much bigger than our old bed. I could roll around on it twice without falling. It even works as a trampoline." Liang Xiaoying scoffed. "You're so old, and you're still thinking about playing around? Have you memorized the text? Have you finished the exercises? The Shija textbooks are a different edition than the ones we used before. Can you keep up?" "Of course," Liang Xiaoman said confidently. "Don't worry, Mom. By the end of next semester, I'll definitely be in the top 50. He was also worried about tuition. Shihia's annual tuition is over 100.000 yuan. And the maximum scholarship award is 50 yuan. The remaining amount is also a significant expense for their mother. Only by working hard to win the scholarship could we truly reduce the burden on our family. Liang Sui gently touched the top of her son's head. After years of dependence on each other, he often didn't need to use sign language for the two children to understand him. Liang Xiaoman realized that her mother was telling her not to work too hard, and shook her head nonchalantly. It's not hard at all. Haven't my Chinese and English grades caught up? Mom, I don't need to go to cram school anymore. I didn't get it before, but now I have, and you won't have to waste money anymore. The three of them cuddled together and talked for a long time. As the sky gradually darkened, the two children began to yawn. Liang Sui then remembered that she hadn't made dinner yet. I'll go cook. Liang Sui cheered up and gestured to the children. Liang Xiaoying responded, but Liang Xiaoman seemed very sleepy. She curled up under the blanket, nodded her little head, and said nothing. Xiaoman's physical strength was indeed not as abundant as her sister's, but Liang Sui didn't care too much. She sat up from the sofa and prepared to go to the kitchen to make dinner. Xiaoman? He heard his daughter ask just after opening the refrigerator door. What's wrong with you? Is your stomach upset again? Liang Sui was startled and turned her head to see Xiaoying pulling back the blanket. Xiaoman underneath was hunched over like a shrimp, holding her stomach with both hands. Her face was so white it was scary, but she was still gritting her teeth and pretending. No, your face is so pale and you still say no. Liang Xiaoying stood up and looked around. Where did you put your medicine? Did you not take your medicine today? Huh? Speak. Liang Sui hurried over to help look for it. The mother and daughter worked hard for a while, and finally found the medicine bottle in the drawer under the coffee table. They immediately poured out 2 pills and stuffed them into Liang Xiaoman's mouth. Liang Xiaoying brought a glass of water to feed her brother, and while feeding him, she was annoyed. I was too busy these 2 days and forgot to remind you to take your medicine. You didn't even take yesterday's medicine, did you? Liang Xiaoman was speechless. Liang Sui felt distressed and blamed herself. It was his fault as a mother. The doctor had clearly told him again and again that Xiaoman must not stop taking the medicine at the moment. How could he forget such an important thing? He had already relapsed once, and it took a lot of effort to stabilize the condition. If the cancer cells spread again, then, apart from organ transplantation, there would be no other buffer treatment. And the right medicine is not so easy to wait for. After all, it was an imported special medicine that had won the Nobel Prize in the pharmaceutical industry. After taking the medicine for more than 20 minutes, Liang Xiaoman's pale face gradually returned to rosy. Liang Sui pressed his stomach for him, and did not feel any obvious lumps. She finally let go of her worries. Fortunately, there was no deterioration. Liang Xiaoying put the medicine away. As soon as she took the bottle in her hand, she tutted her words and shook it, listening to the gurgling sound inside. The girl let out a disapproving expression. Such expensive medicine, and it's gone in 2 days? How cruel. She said it casually, but Liang Sui felt the body in her arms tremble. Liang Xiaoman buried his head in his mother's arms, his fingers tightly gripping his shirt, and he became even more silent. Liang Xiaoying always lacked patience with people other than Liang Sui, and was far less alert to any alpha who might bully her. Unaware of her brother's abnormality, she glanced at the 2 people on the sofa and ordered with a little adult's aura. All right, Xiaoman isn't feeling well. Sui, hold him for a while. I'll go make dinner. Tomato and egg noodles, okay? She didn't call out for her mother. Liang Sui glanced at her daughter, but her face remained expressionless, and she simply nodded, perhaps still feeling uncomfortable. Liang Xiaoman kept shifting in his arms, unable to rest. Liang Sui wanted him to rest for a while, so she hugged his thin body with her arms and gently rubbed her son's forehead with her chin, telling him not to move around anymore. Liang Xiaoman really stopped moving around and lay obediently on his chest, with his arms half draped and half hugging his mother's broad and soft chest. Just like the posture of breastfeeding many years ago, which made Liang Sui feel a little itchy. After a while, Liang Sui felt the watch chain being pulled, and looked down to see Xiaoman playing with his pocket watch again. The boy hung his head, holding the small and exquisite quartz watch, opening and closing it repeatedly, making bursts of clicking sounds. There used to be a small photo inside. Ever since he and Xiaoying met their father, His mother had removed the photo. He secretly looked for it several times but couldn't find it. He didn't know where his mother had hidden the photo. Mom. After hesitating for a long time, Liang Xiaoman couldn't help but ask, "Why don't you marry Dad?" Liang Sui closed her eyes, as if she didn't hear. Liang Xiaoman didn't get an answer, so he kept asking. Liang Sui was so annoyed that she gestured awkwardly. "Don't call that guy Dad. He's not Dad." Liang Xiaoman asked. "Then what about Xiaoying and me's dad?" "He's dead." Liang Xiaoman pouted and changed the subject. "Why didn't you take the check he gave you that day?" Liang Sui understood. The little guy had been awake in the car that day, and it was hard for him to hold back so long before asking. The man was distressed and thought about how to explain to his son. After a long while, he slowly organized his words. "Once you get the check, you have to leave. You can't leave." Liang Xiaoman thought for a moment and said, "Breakup fee?" "Yeah." Liang Sui nodded, but then felt something was wrong. Was this a breakup fee? After all, Xu Jingyi had already compensated him once when they broke up. But if it wasn't, the check at that time did express his desire to completely draw a line between them. Just as he was distracted, he heard his son say, "But Mom, you can just take the check, but not leave Los Angeles." Liang Sui was stunned. Liang Xiaoman continued to argue. "You cashed the check first, and then stayed in Los Angeles. Dad, then, that person, can he still force you to leave?" Liang Sui reacted and poked her son's forehead with her finger, expressing her condemnation in a subtle way. "You're wrong to break your promise." He didn't use much force, but Liang Xiaoman still feigned pain, clutching his forehead and mumbling pitifully, "I know this isn't right, but even if he doesn't want to acknowledge you, or Xiaoying and me, there's nothing wrong with paying him. He looks like one of those super powerful elites on TV. He must have tons and tons of money, more than he can spend. What's wrong with giving us some? It's the alpha's responsibility." Liang Sui shook her head. "If you do something wrong, you'll be punished." Xu Jingyi was indeed powerful. Therefore, his punishment would be terrible. A kind of horror Liang Sui couldn't bear. His thoughts drifted back to that day many years ago. A nightmare etched deep into his flesh, blood, and soul. Even the fleeting replay of it still sent a chill through him. The skyscrapers of Los Angeles rise layer by layer, their highest points soaring into the sky, their lowest points huddled in the dust. It's the same with people. The wrath of a superior being could crush a mere ant struggling to survive like him to pieces. Liang Sui couldn't afford such a heavy price. No, he said, looking seriously into the black eyes that bore a striking resemblance to his own. "You are not his responsibility. If anyone had to be held responsible for these two little creatures, it was Liang Sui. The one who had insisted on bringing them into this world should be held responsible. Xu Jingyi. He and Xu Jingyi had ended long ago, and there was no chance of rekindling their relationship. Naturally, the responsibility shouldn't be shifted onto someone else. Liang Xiaoman was unconvinced and wanted to say more, but Liang Xiaoying had already prepared dinner and brought it over. He had no choice but to shut up and swallow his frustration along with the soft noodles. After dinner, making sure Xiaoman was no longer upset, the three of them prepared to bathe and go to bed. Although there was only one bedroom and one large bed, the children were still young. Their pheromones were only just beginning to be secreted, and they were still far from fully differentiating, so there was no need to be too discreet. "Xiaoying, do you want to live on campus?" Liang Sui asked. "No." Liang Xiaoying shook her head decisively. "I won't live at home. What if someone bullies you?" She was the only alpha in the family. How could she possibly abandon Sui Sui and Xiao Man? Liang Xiaoman also raised her hand. "I won't live on campus either. I want to stay with my mother." She was worried about letting him live on campus in the first place. Hugging the two children, Liang Sui placed a kiss on each of their different but equally adorable faces and slowly closed her eyes. Just before she was about to fall asleep, the phone rang suddenly and rapidly. Liang Xiaoying insisted on sleeping on the outside of the bed. At this moment, she reached out and took the phone from the bedside table. She looked at it in the light of the night light and mumbled something vaguely, which didn't sound nice. "Who is it?" Liang Xiaoman asked. rubbing his eyes. He was almost asleep. Liang Sui wanted to answer the phone, but Liang Xiaoying refused. She sat up in bed and lowered her head to type on the phone keyboard. Liang Sui watched her press the send button and texted the other party back. But it seemed to be of no use. The phone was still ringing. After she hung up, she kept calling, as if she would keep calling all night if the call didn't go through. Although the wall panels were thick and there was no need to worry about the ringing disturbing people in the middle of the night, she couldn't just let the call go on. Liang Sui had no choice but to pat her daughter and take the phone from her. The contact's name was flashing and jumping on the screen. Ah! Liang Xiaoman also came over and exclaimed when he saw the name clearly. For a moment, the faces of the three of them were not very good. After a while, Liang Xiaoying said, "Why bother with him? Just hang up and turn off your phone." Liang Xiaoman hesitated. "If I don't answer Grandpa's call, he'll get mad and start beating me up again." Liang Xiaoying glared. "Let him do it, he's a million miles away. I don't believe he can come all the way to Los Angeles to do this. Besides, the old man had a restraining order against him for his crimes in Los Angeles, forbidding him from setting foot in Beijing and Luoyang for 10 years. If he dared to break the law, we could just call the police and have this old troublemaker arrested." Liang Sui didn't want to answer the call either. Just as she was about to listen to her daughter turn off the phone, it dinged again, and a text message popped up. Weichuan Supermarket, 807 Yongle Street, Jingtao Town, Lanxi County, Linan City. Liang Sui's pupils fluttered. Linan? That's... Staring at the word for a long moment, Liang Sui blinked slowly, then clicked on the call log and dialed back. The call went through the next second. "Hello?" It was a gruff male voice, clearly damaged by alcohol and cigarettes. But it wasn't unpleasant, and even had a hint of charm to it. The tone was quite warm. "Sui, why are you answering the phone so late? You're up so early?" Liang Sui listened quietly, without reacting. "Hi, are you listening? To let Dad know. Or blow into the phone." Liang Sui remained silent. This kid, the other party scolded him, but didn't care. He hasn't been home for more than a year or two, and he doesn't even send a text message to say hello to his father. He has no conscience. Liang Sui never responded. The man still insisted on finishing this monologue. He talked a lot to himself, and finally asked like a kind father, "When do you plan to go home this year? Can you come back for the Dragon Boat Festival? Dad just picked some bamboo leaves, and I will make rice dumplings for you by hand then." The phone was on speakerphone all the time. Liang Xiaoying finally couldn't stand it anymore after hearing this. She snatched the phone away and asked loudly, "Why go back? Let you sell him to that perverted club to pay off the debt? Liang Yudong, can you have some shame? You are an alpha with hands and feet. Don't think about eating your son all day long. I tell you, don't even think about it. Impossible. Sui will never go back in this life. No matter how much money you owe. It has nothing to do with us. Trash like you will rot in the casino sooner or later." Bah! Before Liang Sui could stop her, Liang Xiaoying opened her mouth like a machine gun and started to spray the other person with blood. The person opposite tried to mediate several times but couldn't drown out the little girl's voice. Finally, he yelled in anger, "Liang Sui, control this bitch you gave birth to. Is this how you talk to your own grandfather? Huh? Is that how you teach your child?" Liang Sui wanted to take the phone, but Liang Xiaoying still refused to give it to her. She sneered, "Come on. Stop beating around the bush and tell me directly. What tricks are you planning this time? How does this girl talk? She's getting more and more unruly as she gets older." Liang Yudong was pretending to be angry. Seeing that she stopped scolding, he followed suit and said embarrassedly, "Is your mother listening? Ahem. I'm not that girl. I have a sum of money that I can't pay back right away." "If you have enough money," Liang Xiaoying said. "I'm hanging up." She was about to press the hang up button. "Hey, no, Liang Yudong shouted in a hurry. Sui, just think of it as borrowing it from me. Daddy really has no other choice. If you don't help me, I can only go to your mom." Liang Sui held her daughter's hand. Liang Xiaoying turned her head to look at him. Liang Sui's mouth was tightly tightened. and her expression was serious with a hint of anxiety. He gestured quickly a few times, and Liang Xiaoying nodded, snorting disdainfully at Liang Yudong on the other end of the phone. Nonsense again. Do you know where my grandmother is? How could I not know? Isn't she in that little pottery town in Linan? I even found out the house numbers for her and that bastard she loves. That bitch is quite good at hiding. Hang up. Hang up. Liang Yudong breathed a sigh of relief, finally giving up on playing the emotional card. Sway. I won't waste my time either. Help Dad plug this hole. And I'll pretend I don't know where your mother is and let her live happily with that supermarket owner. Otherwise. The alpha's tone suddenly took on a hint of hostility. You know that when Mu Qingqing left you and ran off with someone else, she hadn't divorced me yet, right? A low-class omega, a thing I hold in my hand. She abandoned her husband and children for so many years. If I really catch her back, no one would care if I crippled or killed her. The real purpose was revealed. Liang Sui clearly heard the hint of ruthlessness in his words, and her heart suddenly tightened. To be honest, even he knew only that Mu Qingqing was hiding in Linan City. He had no idea of her exact address. And he had never considered asking. He didn't want to disturb his mother's current life. Whatever it was, it couldn't be worse than being abused and beaten by Liang Yudong. A beast worse than pigs and dogs. But Liang Yudong knew, as the husband, spouse, and master of an inferior omega, denied full civil rights. If he wanted to, he would find out. He would find a way to ruin his mother's new life, which she had finally escaped from hell. Sway? Liang Xiaoying's eyes widened in disbelief. What are you saying? No. Why should I give him money? Not a penny. Liang Yudong quickly said, I don't want more. Didn't you just transfer 45 yuan for rent from your account a few days ago? I checked and you have a little over 100.000 yuan in your savings. So, transfer me 90.000, 80.000. Dad won't take the remaining 20 yuan. Saving it up should be enough for the three of you, right? Liang Sui took a deep breath. Obey your husband. Obey your father. As inferior omegas, both herself and her mother couldn't escape the alpha's control. 50,000 at most. Raising a child is a big expense for me. And the hospital bill is over 20,000 a month. Liang Xiaoying relayed his words with a sour face. How could you be short of money? Liang Yudong didn't believe it. After thinking for a long time, he asked, didn't you go to an aristocratic school in Los Angeles for high school? I heard that there were dignitaries everywhere. Hey, Sway. I remember you were hooking up with a very wealthy second-generation rich man in school at that time? He gave you a mobile phone and brand-name gifts, and even covered your tuition, which saved our family a lot of money. No matter how I asked you, you didn't tell me. These two kids around you are other people's children, right? Liang Xiaoying scolded. You old man, you have Alzheimer's disease, right? What nonsense are you talking about? Sway, you came to Los Angeles this time to join your lover, right? The more Liang Yudong thought about it, the more he felt that this was the case. He slapped his thigh. It's not easy for your dad to give birth to you and raise you. You can't just follow rich people and live a life of luxury without caring about my life. ... In the end, he still gave him 80.000. Liang Yudong still didn't give up, and kept on nagging. You are such a stubborn kid. If that guy doesn't want you, won't you find another way out? You inferior omegas are born to make money without doing anything. Why do you do hard labor? How much money can you make by working hard? You can find a nightclub to hang out, or find a way to work on your own. I'm not bad looking, although a little stronger than the average omega. But some people like me, just like your mom, with big breasts and a big ass. She sways every 3 steps when she walks. And she can sway an alpha's soul away. My poker friends come to my house to play. And who doesn't have their eyes light up when they see her? If that woman hadn't refused to do it, I would have sent her to Shalwajo to work and make money. Liang Sui hung up the phone. Probably because he got the money and was satisfied. Liang Yudong didn't continue to call to harass her. Sitting on the bed, her eyes lowered, she stared at the small dark mark at the foot of the wall that looked like it was drawn by a child with a marker. After a long while, Liang Sui's attention slowly returned. The brother and sister were arguing indignantly, and Liang Xiaoying, who was so strong-willed, was almost crying. Her eyes were red, and she hugged her mother's arm and cursed fiercely. That old man is always finding excuses to rob money. That's 80 yuan. It's enough to buy Xiaoman medicine for several more months. That old man can lose it all in one night. Liang Xiaoman's eyes were also red, and she leaned against her mother and cried, 20,000. 20 yuan. How long will it last? Mom, sell my longevity locket. It's made of gold and very valuable. Liang Sui sighed softly, lowered her head again, kissed the two children on the cheek, and rubbed their foreheads to show her comfort. Don't worry, he smiled softly. A lingering melancholy etched between his features. But his eyes remained clear, unclouded. Mom will find a way to make money. Liang Xiaoying gritted her teeth. What's the point of making money? Unless we pay you in cash. That old bastard will come and demand the money as soon as it's in the account. But even if the salaries were paid in cash, what about the two major expenses? The hospital and the school? As guardian, Liang Yudong would be notified of any electronic records, ownership of inferior omegas, and the various personal rights that derive from them, has never been in their own hands. What are we going to do in the future? She sniffed and looked at her mother. Are we just going to keep being his blood bag? When will it end? Liang Sui remained calm. It's okay. Wait until he dies. In his youth, he was involved in the underworld, suffering from injuries and illnesses, addicted to smoking, drinking, gambling, and even drugs. Liang Yudong's health has deteriorated significantly in recent years. His foundation has long been depleted, and he will definitely not live long. When he dies, Mu Qingqing, Liang Sui, the children, and everyone else will be free. Xu Jingyi walked out of the elevator on the second floor below ground. His assistant Zhang Wei drove over to meet him. Before the car stopped, a little head popped out of the car window, showing him a brilliant smile with missing teeth. Uncle, over here, Vite C missed you so much. Xu Jingyi stood still, looking around, but didn't see the person he expected. His face looked very bad. Little bastard. Where is your mom? The little bastard held his face and pretended to be cute. Mommy went to catch bugs. Xu Jingyi looked at his assistant. What's going on? Zhang Wei hurriedly said, Oh, miss, he just rushed Master Mao Wei over here, saying that she wants you to help take care of him for a few months. She has an urgent project and has already flown to Amazon overnight. Xu Jingyi took out his mobile phone to call his unreliable cousin He Yinuo. But he didn't know if she had boarded the plane, and the phone kept showing that the call could not be connected. Uncle, please get in the car. Let's go home quickly. I want to go play with Shirley. He Mao Wei twisted his body in the car, his eyes shining. How many babies did Shirley give birth to? I have thought of several names for them. Uncle, you pick the one that sounds good. Xu Jingyi took a deep breath, got in the car and called He Yicheng. As soon as the call was connected, he asked, What's the matter with your sister's new project? Didn't she say she changed her research direction? Why is she going to the rainforest to feed mosquitoes again? What? It was very noisy on He Yicheng's side. It was probably in a dance hall. The disco music in the background mixed with the cheers of men and women hit the eardrums. After finally hearing what he was asking, He Yicheng spoke with a thick tongue and answered drunkenly, I don't know. My sister didn't tell me about the things she did in the research institute. Oh, she left Wei Zai to you again, right, brother? Hiccup, brother, if you don't have time, please send the child to me. Xu Jingyi said coldly. Send him to your Pansy cave? Let him be taken to a nude party at such a young age by your uncle? He Yicheng was stunned by the drink. He could only smile foolishly and couldn't say a useful word. From time to time, the sweet voice of Omega calling He Xiao to continue playing came from the other end of the phone. Xu Jingyi felt annoyed. Okay, play yours, drink less, and remember to come to Mingsheng for a meeting at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Oh, I know, brother, thank you for your concern. After hanging up the phone, Xu Jingyi pressed his eyebrows and said to his nephew who was cosplaying as a good baby in the seat next to him. I'm very busy recently, you'd better be quiet, little bastard. And don't make trouble, understand? He Maowei looked innocent. Uncle. The teacher said there will be a parent-teacher meeting tomorrow. I know. I'll arrange someone to go. No, it must be a parent. He Maowei was anxious, and he kicked his short legs and almost stood up in the car. I ranked 9th last semester. The teacher will specially praise the top 10 tomorrow. And the parents have to go up and speak. Xu Jingyi concentrated on replying to emails. I'm busy. HMPH. Then I'll get my dad. Xu Jingyi happened to be passing by Huanzhong Highway at that moment, and casually glanced out the window. The Mingjiang River looked peaceful and beautiful under the night sky, its surface shimmering like a layer of silver foil. He said nonchalantly, "Okay, then you go and fish your dad out." Zhang Wei couldn't help but glance back in the rearview mirror, only to see his boss typing away on his laptop, his expression calm and composed, without any sense of guilt for playing a hellish joke on a child. Of course, He Maowei was no ordinary child either. My mom said dad washed up on Dusk Island, not in the Mingjiang River. It's too far away, and I have to grow up to find him. He Maowei pouted. Uncle, just come with me. I've made a good friend in class, and I want to introduce her to you. Hearing the word, good friend, Xu Jingyi couldn't help but glance sideways at him. When He Maowei was born, He Yinuo had just received news that the cruise ship her husband was on had capsized. Shocked, she suffered a difficult labor, and the child suffocated in the womb for several minutes before being born. Perhaps due to damage to some brain nerves, He Maowei, while having normal, even excellent, IQ tests, was far more childish and withdrawn than his peers. Growing up, he'd never been able to hang out with his classmates, and rarely mentioned making any friends, let alone good friends. Xu Jingyi. Yes, who's the child? I don't know. He Maowei shook his head. Xiaoying's family isn't in the business world. They don't have much money. But she's incredibly bright. She just transferred here and immediately topped her grade. She skipped 2 grades and is only 7 years old. But she's taller than the other 4th graders. She's also a great soccer player and a quick learner of horseback riding. No one can match her. Xu Jingyi had been listening absent-mindedly when a name he'd heard somewhere recently caught his ear, and his fingers paused on the keyboard. He Maowei didn't notice his uncle's strange behavior and was still happily introducing his new playmate. Xiaoying is an excellent alpha. So everyone listens to her. She asked all the classmates to take me to play. Xiaoying. Liang. Xiaoying.